This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
They are two of Nashville's premier songwriters, the personalities behind the words, Moose Brown and Walt Aldridge, on this edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you for joining us. Our guests for this edition of Conversations have written songs for and worked with some of the biggest names in the music business. Jim Moose Brown is a Grammy award-winning songwriter. He co-wrote It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, a song Alan Jackson and Jimmy Buffett took to the top of the charts. His songs have also been recorded by Terry Clark, Darryl Worley, Martina McBride, and others. Twice, Billboard magazine named Walt Aldridge to its top 10 list of country songwriters. His song, Holding Her and Loving You, was named Song of the Year by the Nashville Songwriters Association International. His musical talents are not limited to writing. He has produced, engineered, and played with some of the best, from Peter Cetera and Lou Reed to Conway Twitty and Reba McEntire. In 30-plus years in the music business, Walt has covered the musical spectrum. Moose Brown, Walt Aldridge, guitars in hand, welcome to Conversations.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
We are on set of Studio Amped, and you guys are going to be recording a show in conjunction with the Pensacola Beach Songwriters Festival, so looking forward to that. But let me ask you a question. How do you become a songwriter?
Well, the more important question is how you get out of the business. That's what I've been trying to do for 35 years. It's unlike a lot of jobs. There's not really you don't go to a school and get your West Point ring and put it on somebody's desk. A lot of people find their way into the business in different ways, but I think most of us that have become songwriters did it just because there was something inside of us that had to make up songs, and eventually we were playing those for people, and eventually somebody said, hey, that's a pretty good song. I might want a friend of mine to hear it. And I don't know how it worked for Jim, but that was pretty much it for me.
Moose, what about you? Same way, or?
Kind of the same way. I kind of backed into the whole deal. I'm primarily a studio musician, and I still am to this day. And I play on a lot of people's records that come out of Nashville as a keyboard player. And so I get the opportunity to meet some of the bigger songwriters and artists. And early on, when I started doing recording sessions, some of the songwriters especially would say, we ought to get together and write. I love writing with a keyboard player. And so I just I didn't grow up wanting to be a songwriter as much as I did a studio musician. But after I got into it and I started learning, it won me over. And
Is writing songs this day and age, is it a business type environment, or is it an inspirational thing? You know, do you sit down in an office and write songs, or do you sit down over a drink and write songs?
Well, I think there's some of both, and there are certainly writers that do it different ways. I think most people would be surprised at how business-like it is. Most of us have offices, and we go in, and I always say my inspiration comes from mortgages and alimony, you know. So, I mean, we do go in and write on days that we don't necessarily feel the anointing. And a lot of times your inspiration does come after a certain amount of perspiration, of sitting down and slugging it out. But still, I think that our business, the whole thing of creativity, you can't completely legislate it. You know, you have to sit down and give yourself the opportunity with your tools, your guitar, your laptop, your piano, whatever you use. But there still has to be a certain amount of magic, I think, that happens when it's a really good song, you know.
Yeah, you want to add to that, Moose? Same for you, or?
pretty much the same, yeah. I think that we're forced to treat it as a business because it is a business, but really the best songs come from the heartfelt stuff, you know.
Right.
So.
What inspires you? Do you look for inspiration, or is it just something that just, comes? You know, just like you said, mortgages and alimony.
Right.
You know, I mean, is that?
Well, it certainly comes in just being observing other people's lives. I mean, obviously, there's a point that your life, it can't be interesting enough to write about what you live. Most people, for 35 years like I have. And so you have to be an observer. The old saying is you don't have to be a murderer to write a murder mystery, you know.
Right.
But I think it's in conversations that you have with people. It's noticing what's going on around. Sometimes it's things you're personally experiencing. A lot of times it comes from a musical place if you're a musician, like Moose and I are. We might just start with a riff or a groove of some kind, a little melody, and that develops into something. I can't say that it always comes from one particular place, but I do think I think that songwriters that I know that are successful at it, they're sort of lightning rods. You know, they're open to They kind of always have their feelers out for something that might make a good song, you know, and you'll see them, their eyes kind of light up when you're having a conversation because they're about ready to write an idea down that you said, you know. So it does come from a lot of different places.
I was going to ask you if you had, you know, kind of in the country music field, it's kind of, you know, a lot of these guys, I guess, have lived it, you know, the honky-tonk life. And I was going to ask you, do you have to, you don't have to live it to write it, I guess.
I think it helps sometimes if you've lived it, but I think just having having empathy, you know, being able to put yourself in another person's shoes. And a lot of times when I write, I almost think of it in terms of like a movie. Like if I hear a hook, if Walt throws out a hook when we're writing together, I think about what that means to me, and I start seeing images of where the story goes and where it leads you to, and I kind of have the story kind of played out in my mind before I actually start writing it a lot of times, you know.
That's interesting. How often do you write with a partner, either one of you?
Almost all the time for me. I have written by myself, but I really don't enjoy it. It feels like work because when you're in a room with somebody, especially a friend, if you reach a point where you're kind of hit a wall, if nothing else, you can tell a joke, laugh, you can get up, go have a cup of coffee, and there's this relaxed camaraderie that goes on that feels good. And so I enjoy that part of it as much as I do the writing. And not only that, but if you do kind of hit a wall and you're by yourself, it's hard to get over that wall, but with somebody, they can say, well, what if we said this? And that may spark something totally different. And so it works better for me to write with a co-writer.
What about you, Walt?
I feel the same way. I've written songs by myself and even had a couple number ones that I wrote alone, and the checks are better when you write them by yourself. But, you know, the writing room is a pretty lonely and terrifying place by yourself, and you don't have anybody to go eat lunch with, you know, and you don't have anybody to complain about the music business with. And that's a big part of what we do in any given session is first complain about the business and how bad things have gotten for first hour. But they're really, in the perfect world, two heads are better than one, I think, and it does give you somebody to sort of bounce an idea off of. And when you hit a slow spot, hopefully they cheerlead and pick it up for you. So I would say 90%, probably even more of the songs written in Nashville for country radio are co-writes.
When you guys write, do you write to someone? In other words, if you're writing a love song, or you're writing to an old girlfriend or a wife or an ex-wife or whatever the case may be.
Not so much for me. I think it comes back to the empathy thing. Whatever this hook means to story-wise, I try to put myself in the position of the character in that song and what they might be feeling. If it's a hurtful song, you know, try to draw from the pain that they probably would be feeling, and if it's a drinking song, you know, the feeling that they would have there in amongst their friends. So it's more of an empathy thing with me.
And Walt?
Yeah, no, I very few times. Now, when I first started writing, of course, that's what you do when you're a teenager, is write songs to girls.
Right.
And primarily, you learn very early on that you write two-syllable girl names because there are more girls with two-syllable names, and you can just interchange it depending on who your latest interest is. But, no, I mean, as you become, as you take an approach for it to be a business, I think if you're doing your job, you're really thinking about who you're writing the song for, and it's not an individual. It's a big market of people. Right. And it's not just the music industry, and it's not just country radio. It's not just country artists. It's all those people who buy tickets and records and listen to country music. And you do try to kind of think about what that market segment would want to hear and would want you to talk about. But I don't. There's very few times that I've written a song specifically for one person. It becomes so personal that it probably wouldn't have any meaning to anybody but other than them and me.
When you sit down to write, are you thinking of an artist? Are you thinking, I want Alan Jackson and Jimmy Buffett to record this song, or I want Conway Twitty to record this song, or Earl Thomas Conley, or are you just trying to write the best you can, and wherever it falls, it falls?
Sometimes it like if there's an artist that we know is going in, say maybe in 3 weeks or something, and they're looking for, the word has gotten out that they're looking for a summertime up-tempo thing, might sit down and try to write that for that person. That was the case with 5 O'Clock Somewhere, although we weren't writing it for Alan Jackson. We were writing it for an artist who, I won't even mention their name because they don't have a record deal anymore, so thank goodness they didn't cut it. But I talked to their producer, the artist producer, and he said, man, if you got a summertime fun song, we're looking to cut it. And so we wrote this song. Don Rollins and I wrote 5 O'Clock Somewhere with this other artist in mind, played it for the producer, and he got to the chorus, and he said, "No, I don't hear it." So I went, "Really?" He said, "Nah, I don't hear it." So they passed on it, and then it found its way to Alan Jackson later on. So thank goodness that other unnamed artist didn't record it. So
my experience is very similar to that. The times that I have sat down and tried to target a particular artist, I usually miss.
Yeah.
And I guess that's because those artists hear so many of those songs that they can tell were contrived especially for them. I mean, we'll go to the length in Nashville very often to get the same musicians that play on their records, get a singer, hire a demo singer that sounds as much like that artist. And so you'll go in and do this song, say for Reba McEntire, and you play it to Reba, and she says no. And then for the rest of your life, anytime you play that to someone, they say, "That'd be great for Reba McEntire," because it sounds so much like her.
Right.
So I have better luck with just trying to write a good song and get a good recording of it and just hope somebody likes the song. If I make the target too specific, it seems like I miss every time.
Take me back to on 5 o'clock somewhere. You and your partner Don Rollins write this song, and how did it come about? I mean, was this an inspirational type thing, or was this a more just we're in the office?
It was a writing appointment just like any other one. We came in at like 10:30 in the morning, and I usually have a cup of coffee, and I'll say, "You got any ideas?" He says, "You got any ideas?" This particular day, he said, "You know, I've been thinking so it was Don's idea. He said, "I've been thinking about writing this song. It's 5 o'clock somewhere." And when he said that, I thought, man, surely that's been written. I've heard that all my life, you know. Right. Then I started thinking, and I thought, well, I can't really remember a song with that title. So I thought, what the heck, you know, let's write it. So we wrote it really quick. We were done by lunch. We were done. We probably wrote it in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. We went to lunch, and we knew we'd kind of hook something, but didn't really have any idea what was about to happen. And that's another thing too. That's a pretty quick write for me. I don't usually write songs in 2 hours. Sometimes you spend several days getting back together to finish a song. That thing just poured out, and we pitched it to that artist who passed on it, and it found its way to Alan through my publisher. They played it for his producer, and he went in and cut it right away. It was on the radio in like 6 weeks after we wrote it, which is very, very unusual.
Was Buffett on with him initially?
Well, that was Alan's idea. Alan had actually, I found out later, had been looking for a song that he could record with Buffett, and that one just fit the bill perfectly. So that was Alan's idea.
You want to do just a little bit of it for us?
Sure, I guess I can.
Yeah.
The sun is hot and that old clock is moving slow, and so am I. The workday passes like molasses in wintertime. Hey, but it's July. I'm getting paid by the hour and older by the minute. My boss just pushed me over the limit. I'd love to call him something, but I think I'll just call it a day. So pour me something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care, 'cause it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. Walt, one of your big hits, Earl Thomas Conley, Holding Her and Loving You, and that was, how'd that come about?
Well, you know what? It's funny. Most songs I do remember some kind of story. That song, I remember it being just like Jim said. I remember it just being another day at the office. I wrote it with my friend and collaborator Tommy Brassfield, and I'm actually going to have to grab my capo here to demonstrate. But Tommy came in and with the idea, and he said, you know, I'm hearing this thing, and it would be sort of, we just tease them a little bit by starting and saying the third hardest thing would be this, the second hardest thing would be this, and so on. And so it was, it's the third hardest thing I'll ever do, leaving here without you. And after that line, I knew, okay, I got to hear what the second hardest thing is, and then I got to hear what the first hardest thing is. And I think that song really taught me a very important object, writing, a lesson about writing. And it was that. It was how important the first line of a song is, you know, because you have to put something out there that people have to say, okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And so and again, I'll give my co-writer complete credit on that, because I didn't really, he kind of threw that line out, and I said, okay. And for Moose and me both of us being primarily musicians, a lot of times we work best with people that are primarily lyricists. I don't know, is Don
Don is pretty much, well, he plays some, but yeah, he usually doesn't pick up.
Same way with
instrumental,
Tommy.
right.
Tommy was just a lyricist. He didn't play. And so we're thinking at the same time that we're thinking of the words, we're thinking about the music and also how the words sort of marry together with the melody. That's important too.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it right, it kind of sounds like you're playing a song that you're just singing the phone book or something, that doesn't, the mood of the music doesn't match that. But I knew after he said the third hardest thing is leaving here without you, then I thought, okay, well, the second hardest thing is telling her about you, and the hardest thing is holding her and loving you. And I think that and a good recording by Earl Thomas Conley was a big part of the success.
That's one of the best records ever cut.
It was really great. And another case of a song, they cut it and it got out real quick. And a lot of times we have to wait a long time on our songs. We'll write them and wait years before somebody records them, and then it takes a long time to come out. So you've almost forgotten the song by the time it comes out, But,
Do a little bit more for us on that, if you will.
Third hardest thing I'll ever do, leaving here without you. And the second hardest thing I'll ever do is telling her about you. She's been good to me when things were going rough. How can I tell her now that good ain't good enough? And the hardest thing I'll ever have to do is holding her and loving you.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Bring back what we were talking about just a couple of moments ago. So you actually can be a successful songwriter without being a musician per se.
Well, you can, sure. There are plenty of people that do just lyrics. Now, Moose is a really unusual exception to the rule because he wears so many hats. And I've always, my first job was being an engineer, recording engineer, and then I wrote songs on the side and played sessions and sang on sessions and produced records. And Moose has taken the same path. He's done a lot of different things other than just write songs. Awful lot of people in Nashville, they just write songs and they just go in every day and they write songs. And I like, and I think Moose does, likes the variety of being able to one day, you're playing on someone else's music, and maybe engineering or producing, and then one day you're co-writing. And for the same reason I enjoy performing at these songwriter festivals like the one we're down here for. It's not my primary job, it's not how I make a living, but it's fun to get out and get that instant gratification from playing your song and get the audience to react with whatever idea you had for a reaction, right there on the spot. Because again, when you're writing songs, a lot of times you write it and wait for 10 years for your gratification of whatever the reaction is going to be.
Can you have a really great song and perhaps it falls into the hands of an artist who just doesn't do it justice, and will the song carry it? And then conversely, can a really good artist carry a so-so song?
If it works either way, usually the song carries it. The song always, a great song is a great song, and if people identify with it, it's going to do its job. I suppose there are artists who can help a song, but usually it's the other way around to me. I've seen artists come and go that have had huge careers, at least temporarily, off of a great song, and I could probably name you, and Walt too, several artists that have had one huge hit and then maybe nothing again. It's just because that song was so incredible, I think, anyway, it's my opinion.
And it depends on how you define great too. Let's face it, there are a lot of things that are successful that are on the radio at any given point in time that would be called hits. that would be hard to say were great.
Right.
Within the span of a long career of an artist. You know, he might have 10, 15 hits, and whatever's number one this week might not even be one that he is associated with. So, and same thing for writers. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest and say that I've had some songs cut and even had some successful songs that I don't think they were great songs. They just, I think they were good songs, and the timing was right for what they were saying and for what the artist wanted to do, and the artist was big enough to pull them along.
Right.
Well, I kind of feel that way about 5 o'clock somewhere, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm proud of the song and all that, but I would probably pick 20 other songs in my catalog before that one that I felt like I really hooked, you know. I think that's a fun song. The timing was right. Alan was looking for something to do with Buffett. Jimmy Buffett coming on board, you know, brought a certain element to it. And, yeah, I mean, I'm proud of the song, but there's a lot of other songs in my catalog I feel a lot better about, actually, as a songwriter, you know.
It's really funny because I have done this pretty much day in and day out for almost 35 years, and it's such a learning experience still. I mean, you find yourself all the time asking the question, how do I make my art great? How do I make it better? Why is it not, why am I going through a spell here of not getting more songs recorded? Why am I going through a spell now where I am having my songs well received? It's really hard to analyze. There is a lot in this business that's out of your control.
Yeah.
It really falls under that category of, you can call it luck, you can call it providence, you can call it timing, whatever you want to call it. But certainly, in the case of most big hits, there's always that element. And what Moose is describing, I mean, it's perfect. The stars were perfectly aligned for him to have that song for Alan and Jimmy to do. And it just, the timing was perfect, and it was a runaway smash. And I think we all are smart enough to know that most anything we've ever had that was successful relied a little bit on that. It might not have been a big hit on a different artist or different timing.
Mm-hmm. You know, radio has certainly in the past always played a huge role in a song being successful. In other words, getting that airplay and getting it in the big markets, et cetera. But with technology changing the way it has in recent years, is radio as important as it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago? And what I mean by technology changing with the, you know, downloading songs on your computer and that type of thing. You know?
It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. It's a little bit scary. It's a little bit exciting. I mean, I think music will never go away. It'll always be there. People need it and love it. But how they're going to receive it in the future is a little bit scary as songwriters because of, and this is probably a topic you never intended to get into, but because of all the illegal downloading, it's really made an impact on the business, and then of course even the legal downloading, that's all being worked out as far as the share of the royalties that we receive as writers and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit scary. I don't know where it's headed, to be honest with you.
Radio, I guess it depends on how we define it too, because you know there are a lot of things internet-wise. Pandora and various sites that you can go and sort of create your own radio, as they say.
Right.
And it's not traditional terrestrial radio, but I think at least for me, I don't have the time in my day to sit and go through MySpace sites and listen to everybody's crummy music, and find something that I like. And so I think all of us always need some kind of filter to sort of make suggestions to what we might like. So I think radio is going to always play a role. Now, whether radio, as we have all known it, it will be, I think it's certainly going to have to evolve and is evolving. But I think consumers always, there's a lot of music out there. And because of the internet, there's more music than ever. Right. A guy can sit home in his bedroom and make a really good quality recording, put it up on a bunch of websites, and make it available for people to hear. But there still has to be a way for people to get to that and to figure out that it's better than all the other 100,000 songs that people have put up. So we're going to rely on radio or some type of suggestion or filters for what we need to hear, I think, surely.
I do want you to touch on that. I'm not sure the general audience really understands with the illegal downloading. I mean, that's basically taking food out of your mouth as an artist, right?
It's a really complicated issue, you know. I could see where as a person who loves music and you got music out there and it just seems like the acceptable thing to do. Right. What's the harm in taking one song, downloading it off there? But the problem is that if it was just one person, that would be one thing. I speak occasionally to different classes at high schools and colleges and stuff, and we talk about this, and just the communication is so important. I liken it to a situation of like Hershey being in business. And, you know, if it was acceptable for us to go into a store and take a Hershey's candy bar and say, I'm going to take this with me, I'm not going to pay for it. And if I like it, I might come back and buy a box, or I may not.
Right.
Well, if that goes on millions and millions of times the way that illegal downloading is, pretty soon Hershey's out of business. And that's what we're seeing as an industry. And it affects not only songwriters, but it affects the whole food chain, because the money stream filters through publishers down to songwriters, artists. Well, if there's less money coming in, then the labels have less artists to have on their roster, so there's less jobs for bus drivers, less jobs for sound technicians. I mean, it just goes right down the chain. So our industry is shrinking and hurting because of that. You know?
A lot of people don't realize too that we're paid on a royalty basis. You know, you can get a song recorded by the biggest act in the business. You don't get paid a dime for that until they sell copies of it, or until it gets performed on the radio or television. So, you know, if I got a song recorded by Alan Jackson, but it was never legally sold, I don't make a penny. And so we rely on a royalty system where record companies account to us for how many they have sold, and we get paid a percentage accordingly.
Less than a minute. You guys got anything big on the horizon we need to know about?
Well, I was telling you before we came on the air, I co-produced an artist named Jamie Johnson, and his album just came out a week before last, and it was #1 on the country charts.
Great.
And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Great.
And yeah, you need to go out and buy a copy of that, everybody.
Sounds good. Well,
That's a great record. I'm writing songs every day, getting a few things cut here, nothing on the radio right now, but keep listening for me.
thank you guys for spending some time with us. It was
Thank
great.
you.
We wish you all the best, and enjoy yourself at the Pensacola Beach Songwriters Festival. And that 5 o'clock somewhere will fit in quite nicely around on the Gulf Coast. Jim Moose Brown, Walt Aldridge, a couple of Nashville songwriters who've been very successful, had a lot of hits. And as I mentioned in the open, they do more than just write songs. They work on studio sessions and produce, and we're very fortunate to have them join us on this edition of Conversations. By the way, if you'd like to see some of our past shows, you can do so. We are online at WSRE.org/conversations. All you have to do is click on the Episodes tab. And we're also on Facebook. Just search out Conversations with Jeff Weeks. We'd love to hear from you. Again, we appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm Jeff Weeks. Take very good care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.